Hello world, Krista here with Books and Jams. I'm here today to tell you about all the books that I read at the end of the month in November. I did a mid-month wrap-up in November because I had already read a ton of books by the mid-month point, so I will link that above and in the description box below. I read City of Masks, first in the Stravaganza trilogy. I read Hunted by Megan Spooner, 3 graphic novels in the Amulet series, and Since We Fell by Dennis Lehane. This was my Goodreads read-along group book for the month of November, and I really enjoy Dennis Lehane's writing. And Since We Fell was a strap on your seatbelt kind of a book. I really feel like there was almost 3 stories in one, and each one amped up the pace. In this book we meet Rachel Childs, and at the beginning of the book we learn about who she is and the beginnings of her anxiety. As the book goes on, she becomes a little more agoraphobic. Is that what it's called when you don't like to go out and see people? That gets stronger and stronger throughout the book. We also meet Brian in the second section, who is a man that she initially hires as a private detective, but things aren't always what they seem with him, and they begin a relationship, and that just takes off. By the end of this book, it was like a whirlwind pace, and I was completely there for it. I really enjoyed the experience of reading this. Honestly, I don't remember much of it now because that's just how I am. I don't remember things very often after I read them, but I do remember really enjoying the reading experience of this, and I'm so glad that so many of you read it with me. I had 3 books that I was in the middle of in that mid-month wrap-up, and I did complete all 3 of them. So I finished Rainbow Valley, which is book 7 of the Anne of Green Gables series, and this was super charming about all of Anne's children and their neighbors who all hang out in this Rainbow Valley. So each chapter just told us about some of their shenanigans and adventures. It was super charming and lovely, and I'm very glad that I liked it better than I've liked. I think book 5 and 6 were just kind of okay for me, but I really, really enjoyed Rainbow Valley. And I think I kind of changed my expectations a little bit away from really wanting more of Anne's story, because I just love Anne to pieces. But I'm so glad that I enjoyed this, and I've already actually finished book 8, but you'll hear about that later. Not later in this video. Later in another video. Then I read Jodi Picoult's The Storyteller. In this book we meet Sage Singer, who is a baker and also deals with some, I wouldn't say mental illness, but just some anxiety and some desire to be away from people. She actually has some scarring on her face that she is super insecure about. So she enjoys baking in part because she's a baker, and in part because she's able to work at nights and doesn't have to see a lot of people. But this book is also World War II historical fiction, because Sage meets an older gentleman who comes into the bakery who she finds out some things about him during World War II, and also her grandmother starts to tell her story, and she's a Holocaust survivor. I love World War II fiction, as you know. The thing that I really liked about this, but was also very difficult, is that we get a perspective of a Nazi soldier, and I'm not sure that I've read any World War II historical fiction from that perspective. I've read books that have Germans during that time, and also a lot of Holocaust survivor stories, but I'm not sure I ever read a book that includes the story of a Nazi officer who worked at a concentration camp and kind of got their perspective. That was super interesting to me. This had some twists and turns, and Jodi Picoult is always very good about making you question your immediate response, your gut kind of reaction to how you would respond to something. She presents different sides to the story, and she does that in this book as well. I really enjoyed this. This was in my BookTuber Recommends jar. Lisa from Brand New Book Smell recommended this to me, and I'm really glad that I read it, and she knew that I would like it, and of course I did. Then I read The Boston Girl by Anita Diamant, and this was part of Robin from the Driftless Readers Goodreads book club called Blast from the Past. In her book club, they read historical fiction every month, and I joined in November for The Boston Girl. I really enjoyed this. Actually, this is a grandmother telling her story to her granddaughter the whole time. So we don't really meet the granddaughter, we just hear the grandmother's story. You feel like you're sitting there listening to someone tell the story. I really liked the style of writing. The grandmother's name is Addie, and it's almost like her coming of age story that she tells to her granddaughter. So she is telling it as an older woman about growing up in a very strict home and not having a lot of freedoms, but the way that she kind of makes her own way through all of that. I just really thought it was beautifully told, and I was captivated by it. I read it very quickly, was just very drawn in by the writing and by Addie's story. And I really did feel like I was sitting by her bedside, kind of listening to Grandma tell me about her life. It was really beautiful. I said in November that I wanted to knock off some books from my Book of the Month Club shelf. Since We Fell is one of those Book of the Month Club books. And I also read Turtles All the Way Down and Little Fires Everywhere. So Turtles All the Way Down is very hyped on BookTube right now. This is John Green's newest novel. So this is the story of Aza, who is in high school, and she deals with severe OCD with some thought spiraling processes. I flew through this book. I thought the pacing and the story were okay. I didn't like this book as much as everybody else did. It was just okay for me. I never have experienced any kind of OCD or thought spiraling, so I found it very interesting to read about it, but also I wasn't able to really connect with her at all. It was just so far from my scope of experience and understanding. So I'm appreciative because I've heard from others that they could really relate to it. So I'm appreciative that I got to experience kind of getting inside the mind of somebody who deals with this type of difficulty. But at the same time, the plot was just a little crazy. There's a billionaire who's missing. It's her childhood friend's dad, and so she reconnects with him. It's a little bit of a romance there. I don't know. I didn't care as much as everybody else did about this story. But I am glad that I read it, and I think it was important for me to read just to have, I don't know, expand my knowledge or understanding a little bit. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love to read books that are outside of my comfort zone, maybe, because it does help me to expand my own realm of experience. So I'm glad that I read it, but it's not one that I really cared about very much or think that I'll keep forever. So yeah, we'll see. Then I did read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. And this is also very hyped in the bookish world right now. I really did enjoy this story. It's about the Richardson family, and my last name is Richardson, so yay for that. It's about the Richardson family, mainly, who live in this suburb of Cleveland called Shaker Heights, and it's a very planned and organized and intentional community. Elena Richardson is the mom of the family and her 4 children, and we do kind of follow each of the 4 children and their lives to a degree. And then it's also about single mom Mia Warren and her daughter Pearl, who rent property that the Richardsons own. So then we get their interactions with each other, in particular Pearl with some of the different kids of the Richardson family. And the backdrop of all of that is this, one of Elena Richardson's friends is adopting a Chinese American baby who had been abandoned, but then the birth mom is in the picture and is fighting for custody of her daughter. So that's part of the story as well. And it is all woven together really well. While I was reading it, I didn't feel confused or lost. I really read through this very quickly and was very captivated by the story. Because of so much going on, I did kind of not connect fully with any of the characters. At the beginning of the book, we find out that the Richardsons' home is on fire. They immediately think that it was one of their children who started it. So then we kind of go back in time to the beginning of the story and when the Warrens moved in and the beginning of those relationships and the impact of that on the community and on their lives. So while I did really enjoy it, I think I gave it 4 stars. I think at first I gave it 5 stars, but I don't think it's really 5 stars for me. I know many others have given it 5 stars, but for me it was just a 4-star read. The last physical book I read right at the end of the month is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, and this had come highly recommended from Jenna over at Jen the Librarian, and I wanted to get it in this year. I had a couple days before the end of the month and no other physical books that were on my TBR, so I knew this being a middle grade young adult would be one that I could squeeze in there. So I did, and this is about a little boy who is raised by ghosts in a graveyard. It's very different from so many other books that I have read, but I really did enjoy it. So at the very beginning of this book, there's this man who sneaks into a house and kills a whole family except for the little boy, who walks out the open door and up into the graveyard, and then the ghosts in the graveyard protect him and hide him from this man. And then he ends up being kind of adopted by some of the ghosts, and yeah, the story goes from there. It's very fantastical, and it was a quick read, and I'm very glad that I read it. I don't really have much more to say about it than that because I don't want to give everything away. If the little boy leaves the graveyard, he is in danger, so the ghosts keep him there in order to protect him, and he just ends up growing up there until he comes of a certain age. So he does sneak out at times, and he does get into some adventures, and it just talks about all the different people / ghosts that he meets in the graveyard, and a little bit about the danger and why his life is in danger. But it's a fun read, and it's very quick, and I'm glad that I read it. I did drive up to New York for Thanksgiving to spend some time with my family. So I did have 2 audiobooks that I listened to this month. The first of those is my only nonfiction book that I read during Nonfiction November, and that is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. This is a book about Trevor Noah, who was born and raised in South Africa. It talks a lot about the politics and race relations in South Africa during apartheid and before apartheid. He was born, his mother was black and his father was Dutch, I believe, or German, I forget. So he was born colored, is what they call his race. It's a whole specific group of people, and how he related to all of the different races that were there and all of the intentional race separations that the government put in place. It was very interesting, and it's Trevor Noah, so it was very funny. There's a lot of language, so if that's something that bothers you while reading, I did listen to this on audiobook, and a couple times I just kind of cringed because he doesn't hold back at all with his language. While I didn't love that part about it, I'm really glad that I listened to that audiobook. The final audiobook I listened to was The Austen Escape by Catherine Ray. And this is about 2 friends who are a little bit estranged, but they go on an adventure to this kind of big house in England where they can dress in period clothing and live out their Austen adventure. It's a story of friendship, and I am a fan of anything that is Austen related, so I really enjoyed it. Each of the people who came to this house was able to choose a different Austen character to play during the few days that they were there. So that was a lot of fun. They all acted in character, and it also dealt with some of their friendship issues and things from their past, and it was a pretty lighthearted, fun read, perfect for driving. So I'm really glad that I read that. And that is it for me. I think the total is 14 books that I read during the month of November, which I need to stop saying is so insane because I kind of find myself reading around 10 or 11 books each month. So I guess this is a little bit more than that, but 3 of them were graphic novels and 2 were middle grades, 2 were YA, which are also a little bit faster to read. So it makes sense to me that there's 14. It helps that during my nannying, I'm able to read whenever he's taking naps. I don't have to do house cleaning and stuff. I've been able to get a lot of reading done there. So that is it for me today. I'm sorry that this is a late wrap up. I don't know if you guys care that I don't do my wrap-ups right at the end of the month. I'm gonna try to do better at that in 2018, but I'm not gonna make it a goal. I'm just gonna try to do my best. All right, I have a ton of videos to be making within the next few weeks, and I'm very excited about them. So I would love to chat with you down in the comments. If you've read any of these, let me show them to you again. I would love to chat with you if any of these books have been on your radar or if you've read any of them, what you thought about them. I would love to chat with you about it. I would love to know what you're reading right now and if it's good and if you're enjoying it. And chat with me down in the comments below. Give me a big thumbs up if you don't mind that I post my wrap-ups a little bit late. I'm sorry about that. And I will be talking to you very soon with some more videos. All right, bye.